The first mass vaccination of the COVID-19 vaccine has begun in the UK today, and all eyes are now on when India will start its process. So it's important to understand on what basis Indian authorities will actually go ahead and give approvals to the 3 companies that have applied for emergency use authorization to the DCGI, that's the Drugs Controller General of India. So let's begin at the beginning. So there are 3 companies right now: Pfizer Biontech, the Serum Institute of India, and Bharat Biotech, that have applied for this emergency use authorization to the Indian authority, which is the DCGI. They want an emergency authorization, so to speak, permissions immediately to start marketing the vaccine in India. Now, this is where it gets very interesting, because usually these permissions are granted when all phases of trials are over. But this is permission for emergency use, looking at the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic is still raging on and lives are still being lost across the globe and including in India. So how will the Indian authorities decide whether to give permissions or not? And here this is a crucial factor, because remember, so far all the news we're hearing, all the data we're getting are versions of what the companies developing these vaccines are telling us. They are the ones who claim the efficacy, they are the ones who claim that their trials have been successful. But should Indian authorities take that at face value? No, they never do. There's a whole process which follows, and that process needs to be followed even if we are in an emergency situation like the COVID-19 vaccine. Because if that process is followed, if there is transparency, then the general public will have faith. So what are the factors that now the Indian authorities will look at? And this is what we're explaining today. So the first thing that will happen is that all of these applications will be referred to something called the SEC. This is the Subject Expert Committee that has been formed specifically to look into the vaccination rollout process in India. And this SEC, this committee, will look at all the data that these companies are providing to back their claim and back their request for emergency use authorization. What are the factors that will be looked at? One, of course, is the data and the quality of data. So, for example, in Serum Institute of India's case, there have been bridging trials and clinical trials on Indian patients, on Indian people within India, and that data, that phase 3 trial data, and a fair number of people have undergone those trials, is available. So that's a thumbs up in a sense, because they can look at that data. In the case of the Pfizer vaccine, the advantage is that they already have approval from the UK authorities. So it sort of gives another stamp of approval to the Indian authorities as well, that someone in UK, the federal authorities in UK who have the same job, have gone through the process and found it safe to use for their population. So it's possibly safe to use for the Indian population as well. In fact, there are reports, and the Economic Times has reported this, that the Indian authorities will possibly wait for a similar nod for the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, and that will help move things along for the Serum Institute of India vaccine as well. Now, it's not just that a foreign regulator has given permissions or the fact that there have been trials in India. That's not nearly enough. They can also check the way trials have been conducted. Were they ethically conducted? Were there payments made to these candidates who underwent the trials? There is also a facility, or there are also conditions to go and do site visits if are required. And all of these should be done. All these steps should be done, and this vetting process is very, very crucial. They will also look at if there were any adverse events that were reported during the trial. Another crucial part of it, because you want to make sure that this is safe enough for a large amount of the population. So once all of this is done, then there will possibly be any kind of emergency authorization, and then these companies can go ahead and tie up with various parties to provide the vaccine. In India's case, it's possibly going to be the government of India first, which will buy up all of these vaccines and then plan how to roll them out and how to put them out. Now, here's also the important part. India seems to be in no hurry to give this emergency use authorization when compared to, say, the UK and the US. That is because the second wave has been pretty painful in both of these countries. They also have an older population, so those mortality rates are higher. Luckily, we don't seem to have that problem. Our numbers are pretty high, but the percentage of those dying is improving. The number of new cases is consistently falling. In fact, it's the lowest in 5 months now, and that is heartening. That gives us some breathing room to look at all the data carefully and not be under any pressure to give a green signal to these vaccines and let's roll them out quickly, which is a good thing. So hopefully all these processes will take place one by one, the steps will be followed, and there will be transparency so that end users, consumers, all of us really know that there has been a thorough vetting process before these life-saving vaccinations are available.